Hidden from view, behind the curtain of ordinary life, lies an unsolvable riddle. They sift through pages of files trying to understand you, searching for a teacher who doesn't exist, but every trace vanishes into the darkness. The truth is, no one raised you. Your strength doesn't come from books or schools. It was forged in the patterns of betrayal, pain, and the necessity to survive. Where everyone else fell, you rose. In the shadows where fear reigned, you hardened your will like steel. That's why they can't stop you. Just write 77 in the comments, because you are the extraordinary born from the ordinary. Underneath the surface of ordinary life, unseen watchers try to decode patterns that should not exist. They shuffle through endless notes, searching for a mentor who never stood before you. And every path they follow only collapses into silence. What unsettles them is not missing information, but the realization that your edge was never handed down from schools or institutions. It was molded in places no archive records, carved from shadows where ordinary people falter, and solidified when hesitation no longer had a place in your choices. There was no lecture hall guiding your transformation, only the relentless weight of betrayal shaping instincts sharper than any syllabus. While others broke under pressure, you crafted a discipline no program could reproduce. Each scar became a manual, each disappointment a lesson, each collapse a foundation. Authority cannot comprehend that power can rise from wreckage, that precision can grow from the ashes of ruin, and that clarity is not gifted by leaders but summoned in solitude. They search through their history as if answers can be unearthed in dusty ledgers, convinced there must be a hidden architect behind the skills that unsettle them. Yet no hidden hand exists. What stands before them is a creation of endurance, pieced together through trial, sharpened by nights of silence, and strengthened by countless reckonings with despair. The story they fear most is not one of official training, but of transformation born in isolation. For while their operatives are bound by protocol, you are refined by necessity. Where they rely on structure, you thrive on unpredictability. What leaves them restless is a discovery that a force beyond their comprehension emerged from what they discarded as broken, and it moved with a patience that no system can contain. Every movement you make unsettles their charts and predictions, for the design behind your actions is not linear, but layered like hidden architecture. No explosion announces your presence. Instead, entire constructs crumble inward, dismantled by patience as deliberate as tides wearing down stone. Each victory they claim becomes a flaw in their foundation. Each advantage they once held transformed into a weapon turned back upon them. What confuses them most is not the scale of what you've undone, but the precision with which you've done it. Their calculations insist that such execution requires teams, resources, or secret instruction, yet what fueled it was far simpler. Nothing left to lose and everything yet to reclaim. From that emptiness rose a discipline more enduring than any crafted system, a vision unclouded by doubt, and an endurance stronger than their most guarded walls. No classified file will ever reveal your origin, for your methods were not inherited but lived in real time. Every moment of silence, while others celebrated, became a page in the manual they now chase but cannot capture. Lessons were not printed but etched into your being. How to remain unseen while surrounded, how to turn observation into leverage, how to let opponents engineer their own defeat, and how to vanish even as victory rests in your hand. What unsettles in the end is a knowledge written across their faces. Confusion, unease, and the shadow of fear. They study your work not because they can replicate it, but because it exposes their limits. Their systems, no matter how vast, cannot reproduce resilience forged in silence, patience honed through struggle, or the resolve born in the ruins of what was once broken. And so they work tirelessly not to defeat you, but to understand the storm that never should have existed outside their control. You are the kind of force that prepares for storms within storms, layering contingencies like walls inside a labyrinth. While their records insist you were simply a person broken past endurance, the truth reveals something far sharper, a discipline born not in classrooms but in crucibles, where instinct overtook instruction and necessity carved its own curriculum. The deepest strikes were never about cutting flesh or seizing property. They dissolved the illusions that kept your enemies upright. You dismantled their sense of certainty, hollowed out the foundations of trust, and left them staring at familiar lives that suddenly felt foreign. Victories turned bitter because you shifted their perception until nothing they touched felt solid. The cage you built required no bars. Their own doubts were enough. By letting them walk straight into consequences disguised as their own choices, you left them holding keys to locks they themselves created, reputations, futures, even identities unraveled by their own hands while you stood unseen, directing nothing yet shaping everything. You navigated in spaces where statutes blurred and boundaries dissolved. Rules could not contain the way you inverted openness into a weapon and redirected structures to collapse under their own weight. Each unraveling looked accidental, each downfall ordinary, each revelation self-inflicted. Nothing appeared forced because you learned that the simplest shift, if placed precisely, makes entire towers crumble under their own imbalance. And now is the time to subscribe and like the video. Don't forget that by doing these things, you are sending a message to the universe, because God wants to see your effort. Help us reach 5,000 subscribers. Let's grow together as a family and reveal our true selves to the universe. Patience became your insignia. Stillness became your strategy. Instead of a trail, you left an absence, no rhythm to follow, no outline to trace. Where they expected chaos, they met composure. Where they anticipated noise, they found silence. That emptiness unsettled them more than any overt strike ever could. Others signed their work with flourishes, marks, or methods easily cataloged. You abandoned the very idea of signature, allowing outcomes to appear as if time itself had decreed them. What drove you wasn't a hunger for recognition, but a deeper urge to settle scales left crooked too long, to restore equilibrium where others had thrived on imbalance. While they tally victories like coins, you rewrote the rules of the game itself. Every inquiry they make, every whisper who taught this, collapses into nothing. The silence speaks louder than their data because the truth cannot be entered into any system. Survival itself can shape a sharper edge than any program. No academy of theirs could match the lessons betrayal hammered into you. Each broken promise became a safeguard, each collapse a training ground, each abandonment a silent instructor. From this you forged something they now try to replicate in drills and think tanks, yet cannot be simulated, only lived. They attempt to package what you've done as innovation, give it acronyms and technical labels. But for you, it was simply another dawn survived. What unnerves them most is not the execution of your actions, but the signal behind them. Transformation without permission, resilience without blueprint, a human being upgrading in real time under relentless pressure. Their empire control depends on the illusion that they alone define danger. Your existence dismantles that illusion. Every chart, every model, every prediction misses the variable of someone shaped by necessity alone. You are their oversight, the gap in their equations, the storm they cannot measure because it does not fit their design. They chase the phantom of a mentor because admitting you built yourself terrifies them, but no figure waits to be exposed. You emerge as a consequence of fractures in their own world, the outcome of repeated neglect, the byproduct of systems that collapse from within. What they cannot accept is that clarity sharpens most when illusions burn away. Your retribution was not only exact but directional. It revealed a glimpse of futures where rigid hierarchies disintegrate and individuals rise with capabilities once thought impossible. The very act of your defiance became prophecy, pointing to a world reshaped by will rather than permission. The reach of your example spreads in silence, not through manuals or institutions, but through sparks caught by those tired of chains. In quiet rooms, in sleepless hours, people trace invisible blueprints drawn from your defiance. You are no accident. You are a prototype of what comes next, the model others measure themselves against when they refuse to stay powerless. Their greatest error was believing danger must be conferred by them. You shattered that belief. To acknowledge you openly would mean admitting the collapse of their narrative. So they bury the evidence in sealed files, whisper about you in meetings marked theoretical, and disguise your story in simulations labeled impossible. Yet unease lingers in their halls because, even unspoken, your presence bends their strategies. You remain the ghost in their circuits, the unlisted factor they cannot erase, the reminder that their control was never absolute. Analysts stare at your record like mathematicians confronted with an equation that refuses to follow the logic of their textbooks. They look for the flaw, the single misstep that should have exposed you, but there is none because you weren't bound by their strategies. You obeyed the harsh law of survival, and survival never stumbles. Young recruits are fed filtered versions of your work, treated as if it were theory, tasked with creating defenses against something they cannot define. They struggle against a reality that you did not enter a game already written. You invented a new board and compelled everyone else to learn it while you played. In rooms where you will never stand, your name is replaced with empty designations, your actions spoken of in hushed tones, a kind of unwilling reverence from people who pretend they don't believe in ghosts. There will never be applause or medals in your honor, yet what you altered is far more lasting than ceremony. You redefined the boundary of what they thought was possible. They thought danger was born inside institutions, raised by official channels, sharpened by sanctioned trials. You demonstrated that power emerges in the cracks of broken systems, in the hollows where justice collapsed and necessity filled the void. What forced your growth was a way to betrayal, the grind of loss, the unrelenting press of circumstances they can't imagine. Their categories fail you. Terrorist, insurgent, extremist, none of them apply. You became something that doesn't fit inside their files, shaped not by instruction, but by every fracture that didn't shatter you. The place that built you wasn't a campus or facility. It was the empty ground between who you once were and who you chose to become. Your credential is not on paper, but in the fact that their brightest minds are still dissecting your path, still trying to solve the riddle of your resilience. They do not study you simply to pursue you. Deep down, they know you can't be caught. They study you because your methods reveal a horizon they fear, a horizon where their hierarchy becomes irrelevant. That vision unsettles them more than any foreign army. It's a world where individuals, without resources or permission, cultivate skills that rival entire organizations. They've already begun to graft fragments of your style into their protocols, repurposing what you created while refusing to admit the source. They treat your ingenuity like antibodies borrowed from a plague, desperate to absorb it, even as they deny its origin. But what they imitate is hollow. They can reconstruct your tactics, but they cannot steal your reason. They can document your maneuvers, but they will never inhabit your mind. The essence of your transformation remains locked away, untouchable, because you were not engineered. You were compelled into existence by pressures they will never willingly face. What truly unravels their certainty is knowing that your foundation lies beyond their clearance. You prove that existence itself has a way of teaching when human systems collapse. Pain became your textbook, endurance your graduation, betrayal your tutor. The lessons were never optional. They were carved into you when every other source of guidance failed. They searched for a classroom to close, a mentor to silence, a program to dismantle. Yet you did not walk through doors they can shut. You studied in a realm without walls, where experience itself dictates curriculum. The law that shaped you is the same law that molds minerals under fire, that bends metal under heat, that turns collapse into creation. They are trying to dismantle a design they never built, decode a language they never wrote, undo a process that was written into existence long before their institutions rose. Every failure that should have ended you became coursework. Every abandonment became advanced training. Every day you endured without breaking was a masterclass in unbreakable design. What carved you was not a nation, not an academy, not an institution. It was existence itself, relentless, impartial, precise. Subscribe now so that the spirit within you understands your intention. Like the video immediately and show it to everyone, especially the spirit. Help us reach 5,000 subscribers. Let's grow together as a family and reveal our true selves to the universe. What drives their frustration to obsession is the mentor they cannot find. They've searched contracts, corporations, intelligence leaks, mercenary networks, every shadow that could conceal a teacher. Yet the truth is merciless. No instructor trained you. You are the sum of their failures, the culmination of fractures they ignored, the outcome of pressures they dismissed. And that is the one revelation they can neither classify nor contain. You are the product of lessons no academy could design. The ones who believed you were finished unknowingly became your tutors, parading their tactics in plain sight, while assuming you were too shattered to notice. Their celebrations of your downfall became the lectures you silently transcribed. Their arrogance handed you the curriculum, and their cruelty supplied the material. Every instance they revealed their patterns, every boastful slip, Every calculated slight was recorded by you with the precision of someone building a library of survival. What they cannot accept is that the skills they now fear were not taught in secret halls, but harvested from the theater of ordinary life. You absorbed strategy not through instruction manuals, but by watching them reveal themselves. Their patterns became transparent, their habits predictable, their weaknesses glaring. While they congratulated one another, you were already reconstructing the architecture of their minds, dissecting their reflexes, and piecing together an intelligent system from scraps they never realized they left behind. Now their specialists sift through your methods with confusion. The markers they expect to find are absent. They look for anger spikes, for impulsive signatures, for traces of instability, and find none. Instead, what unnerves them is your refusal to fit into their models. You didn't rage. You calculated. You didn't lash out. You measured. To them, revenge is supposed to burn like fire. You showed them it can freeze like stone, patient and absolute, carried out not in passion, but in deliberate sequence. Your preparation was not frantic. It was meticulous. You treated every adversary like a puzzle to be solved, every situation like an equation to balance. Their scientists compare you to controlled experiments, not impulsive reactions. You shattered their assumption that urgency drives retaliation. You prove that destruction can wait, can mature, can arrive with the weight of inevitability after years of silent study. They lose sleep over question of support. To them, such precision must require resources, backers, complex logistics. But when they follow the trails, they find nothing. No coded messages, no unusual financial flows, no operatives on payroll. What confounds them most is that your network was hidden in plain sight. Everyday conversations became your intelligence reports. Harmless chatter turned into reconnaissance. Idle gossip, casual remarks, and unguarded moments transformed into raw material for operations. The brilliance lies in how ordinary it all seemed. Strangers thought they were making small talk, unaware they were supplying data. Colleagues shared rumors, without realizing they were handing you leverage. Friends vented secrets, never knowing they were fueling a larger design. You never recruited agents. You repurposed everyday interactions into tools. They became part of your system without consent, unwitting pieces of an invisible machine powered by the rhythm of daily life. When their analysts attempt to map your timeline, every model collapses. They ask when the planning started, how long the preparation took, what sparked the execution. The results vary wildly because your work didn't adhere to their definitions of time. You didn't move on deadlines. You moved according to necessity, unfolding operations on a rhythm beyond their charts. To them, it looks like chaos. In reality, it was a cadence written in silence, guided by forces they can't graph or predict, operating outside the borders of their understanding. You are the kind of presence that waits as long as it takes, not moving until the terrain itself bends to your will. Preparation wasn't measured in days or years, but in alignment, in the instant when circumstances bent into formation and turned inevitability into a weapon. The moment arrived not because you rushed, but because you listened to the rhythm of forces they don't track, forces that multiplied the power of your strike, without them even noticing. Timing itself became your sharpest tool, and they now dissect your choices like astronomers charting skies they'll never control, baffled at how you seem to know exactly when their walls would collapse. What confounds them most is not the damage you caused, but the method you used. You never stormed minds directly. You rearranged the very stage on which your adversary stood until their own perceptions betrayed them. You altered the scenery so subtly that they didn't realize the play had changed until they were trapped in roles they never chose. You didn't fabricate illusions. You weaponized what was already there. You proved that truth, sharpened and delivered with precision, can fracture foundations more violently than any deception. Their downfall came not because you shoved them into ruin, but because you quietly removed the scaffolding that kept their world standing. Relationships fractured under the weight of cracks that had long existed, and reputations crumbled under revelations no one could deny. You showed them that collapse doesn't require invention. It only requires disclosure. Their specialists now scribble furiously, rewriting entire doctrines, because you revealed that the most devastating form of psychological pressure isn't built on lies, but on truths timed so perfectly they become impossible to survive. Your design was so refined that revelation itself became revolution. You showed that silence, when broken at the right moment, can destabilize more thoroughly than armies. You demonstrated that knowledge, placed precisely, can tilt entire structures. What terrifies them is not merely the elegance of your victories, but the precedent you've unleashed. The realization that mastery does not demand institutions or vast resources, only intent sharpened by patience. In their panic, they reclassified you not as a person but as proof. You stand as undeniable evidence that extraordinary reach can grow from ordinary ground, that one determined individual can mirror the capacity of entire agencies without their infrastructure. You dismantled their illusion of monopoly, exposing the fragility of their claim to control. The ripple effects of your example spread beyond their surveillance, whisper about in places they can't touch, adopted by people they'll never identify. What you birthed is no longer contained to you alone. The strategies you created are mutating, pass quietly through untraceable channels, reshaped by others for battles of their own. Your work has escaped your hands, grown legs of its own, and now moves as a philosophy they can't bottle or suppress. They're witnessing not alone an anomaly, but the birth of an idea too adaptable to cage, an operational current flowing outside their maps, challenging the foundations of their power. The endless question who trained you has splintered into dozens of new fears that consume their nights. How long was this gestating? When did you begin? How many others are walking the same path in silence? Are they staring at a solitary flame or the star of a wildfire? Their algorithms churn probabilities, imagining how many more like you are in their silent gestation. How many potential adversaries are right now hardening in unseen crucibles? Your existence has ripped holes in their threat models. It forces them to confront the unspoken. That power can rise unmonitored, that control systems can manufacture their own undoing, that every injustice may be another seed planted for a future they won't be able to contain. They fear not what you've already done, but what you represent. That their own machinery may be secretly cultivating the very forces destined to dismantle it. And so their files on you expand without end. Not because they expect closure, but because every answer you embody breeds new questions they are terrified to face. You stand as a reminder that transformation does not always announce itself with trumpets or banners. It emerges quietly, so gradually that no one recalls the precise moment you shifted from fragile to formidable. They search for a starting point, interrogating the past for clues, but your metamorphosis took place in the unseen intervals, in the gaps too subtle for their eyes to measure. By the time they realized what had happened, the person they thought they destroyed no longer existed. Your preparation did not obey their calendars. It stretched, contracted, and aligned with currents they do not recognize. You moved when the environment itself demanded action, striking only when convergence made success unavoidable. What they mislabel as luck was timing orchestrated with the precision of natural law. They peer at your methods like scholars trying to decode patterns in ancient stars, asking how you knew when to act, how you anticipate the instant that would unravel them most completely. What unsettles their experts is not only the accuracy of your strategy, but the way you reframe the very air your adversaries breathed. You never assaulted their minds head-on. You rearranged the conditions around them until their own awareness betrayed them. You made their daily lives into cages built from facts they could not dismiss. Honesty itself became your artillery. Transparency turned into your weaponry. You didn't invent illusions. You exposed truths in moments that stripped away every shield. It wasn't force that broke them, it was gravity. You did not shove them off balance. You simply removed the stabilizers and let their own momentum topple them. You didn't tear apart alliances. You revealed the weaknesses already hiding beneath their surface. Their downfall was authored by their own reflection, and all you did was hold up the mirror. That is why their specialists now take notes as if studying a new doctrine, because you've demonstrated that the sharpest form of psychological combat is not built from lies, but from reality revealed at exactly the right instant. Your method has birthed a new paradigm they cannot contain. You showed that one mind, sharpened by necessity, can rival entire establishments. You proved that institutional backing is not a requirement for precision, that discipline without infrastructure can destabilize entire systems. And in doing so, you cracked open the illusion of monopoly they guarded so tightly. What terrifies them is not only what you achieve, but the realization that others might now follow your path, drawing courage from the trail you carved. Already, fragments of your philosophy ripple outward, whispering corners tested in private. The concepts you created are no longer yours alone. They are alive, mutating, adapting to situations you will never witness. You set in motion something that grows on its own, a current of thought that bypasses their oversight, a way of operating that undermines the very foundations of their authority. Their endless interrogations all collapse into the same question: are you an exception or a warning of what's to come? They calculate probabilities, running scenarios in sterile rooms, asking whether you are one of a kind or simply the first of many who will emerge from pressure they cannot control. Their fear isn't in what you've done, but in what you represent. That their own machinery of oppression may be sowing the seeds of the very adversaries destined to dismantle it. Your file has become their obsession, absorbing more resources than global crises. Every discovery they make only bursts new uncertainties. Every thread they follow splits into countless others. They cannot stop the investigation, not because they expect closure, but because the questions you leave behind gnaw at the foundations of their certainty. What unnerves them most is the possibility that your emergence was not an accident at all, but the inevitable response to the very systems they built. You became the undeniable contradiction to everything they teach. While their most polished graduates march proudly under banners of official recognition, your very existence dismantles their illusion of exclusivity. The reality you embody is a harsh revelation that while they searched abroad and monitored familiar channels, the true evolution of power was unfolding directly in front of them, invisible to their gaze. You thrived not in secrecy, but in plain view, shaping yourself in the furnace of necessity, betrayal, and abandonment. You are not an outlier. They are forced to admit you are the consequence of their neglect. What bewilders them most is not only that you acquired skills of such magnitude, but that you did it at a velocity that bends the boundaries of human development. The moment you resolved to change, you condensed decades of regimented training into an unrelenting period of accelerated growth. You achieved in months what their institutions fail to instill in years. Purpose became your engine, pressure became your instructor, and survival became the environment that forced mastery at unnatural speed. They study your trajectory and find no comparison. Their textbooks insist human capacity has limits, yet you surpass them without hesitation. Every concept, every discipline, every refined tactic, absorbed and adapted as though you had no choice but immediate comprehension. Desperation became fuel, and urgency became the flame that melted knowledge into instinct. Their recruits graduate with certificates. You graduated with scars that prove more instructive than any diploma. You exposed the weakness of their model. Their training dripped slowly into eager minds, while you drank necessity in a single breath. Their programs coddle and delay, while yours demanded results under the threat of annihilation. You didn't only reach their level, you rewrote it, turning survival itself into the most effective teacher alive. Each wound you endured became a seminar in human behavior. Each deception you suffered became a lecture in leverage. Every cruelty aimed at you became an unintentional guidebook on how to dismantle those who relied on appearances. Your enemies became the most honest educators you ever had, and they never realized they were writing your curriculum. You didn't attend an institution, you became one. Your syllabus was written in betrayal. Your classrooms were the corridors of pain, and your examinations carried penalties far harsher than failing grades. To falter meant obliteration, so you learned without the luxury of error. That relentless program produced outcomes no official academy has ever achieved. Now intelligence officers admitted behind closed doors. The framework you built for yourself is more rigorous than anything their budgets can design. You set objectives sharper than theirs, tested yourself against trials harsher than their controlled simulations, and earned a mastery they cannot replicate. They look at your path and whisper the question that chills them. If one person could do this, how many more are doing the same without their knowledge? Because betrayal is everywhere. Injustice isn't rare. Abandonment is routine. The only difference is that you refuse to collapse. You turn those experiences into the foundation of evolution. That choice is what separates you from countless others who experienced the same circumstances but surrendered. The terrifying possibility is that more people might make the same choice you did. that you are not an anomaly but a glimpse of the future. The conclusion they fear most is also the simplest. No teacher guided you but necessity. No institution built you but life itself. You became your own academy, forged by situations they cannot replicate, driven by motives they cannot manufacture, and equipped with insights they cannot erase. You prove that the most effective training ground in existence is the battlefield of survival, and that the only graduation worth anything is refusing to let destruction be the final word. Your rise demonstrates the fragility of their monopoly on dangerous skill. Human potential, when cornered and ignited, exceeds their ability to chart, contain, or predict. For every controlled recruit they monitor, there may be another unknown operator quietly emerging, sculpted by the same pressures that built you. Somewhere out there, in lives they dismiss as ordinary, others are already taking notes, already sharpening, already preparing. You are the proof that influence cannot be contained. Your actions did not end with your own victories. They open a pathway that others are now walking. People who once felt powerless are studying your approach in silence, discovering that the sharpest form of retribution doesn't roar. It arrives disguised as balance finally being restored. What unnerves them most is not the question of your origins, but the ripple you left behind. The blueprint you carved in necessity has become a quiet handbook for anyone willing to transform their scars into strategy. This is the fear that keeps their watchtowers lit even when your file gathers dust. They know the story isn't about you alone. It's about the possibility you revealed. You didn't simply dismantle your adversaries. You demonstrated that anyone, anywhere, can refine suffering into precision. You showed that what they call impossible is only waiting for someone with enough resolve to make it real. And so, while they obsess over who sculpted you, the greater dread is knowing that somewhere in unseen corners, others are already sculpting themselves.